I went to see Senator Warren a couple of weeks ago, and this is really hard. It's a really hard decision to make, so we're just trying to get as much info as we can to make a decision.
So you've seen Warren, now you're seeing Biden. Anybody else you've seen?
Yeah, no, that's it. Other than that, not yet.
Okay. What's your top issues? Another hard one?
It's a very hard one. I think I have two sets of issues. One is that I'm really very progressive, and I am also a realist. And so I think that at this point for Caucus, I'm really torn. And at the same time, my top issue, I guess you could say, is I would like to have a president that's presidential. We were just talking the other day about...
Can of worms would be more presidential than this one, huh?
Yeah, I saw someone with a yard sign that said, any functional adult. And I'm like, it's so hard. It's so hard to feel... I grew up in the Kennedy era. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Like, what happened to us? And I think it's very tough, the whole divisiveness. And there's such I keep calling that there is a kindness shortage in this country. We are so mean to each other. And that's just not cool with me. So, I love that I get to live in Iowa and the caucus experience and getting to see candidates like 15 feet away. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, I'm still...
I want to nail down on the realist thing because you say you're progressive, but also a realist. I think kind of the media has conditioned people to think that the moderate candidate is the most electable, but John Kerry lost, Hillary Clinton lost, Al Gore technically won, but in the past 20 years, the moderate of the Biden profile has lost because they have a problem exciting the base.
So true.
So we're told he's most electable because he was vice president, but he's got similar issues, actually more so than Hillary had, against Trump in particular.
Hi, if you happen to be
it's a really good point, and
to DOG, if we can get you to move that vehicle, please.
I think that the polls also show that if you ask people if they'll vote for a woman, they say yes, but they also say they don't think their neighbor will. And so maybe your point is really well taken, that maybe we just need to jump in there and choose, because choosing a candidate that's a lot more extreme has moved the election in previous years and been successful. So you're kind of persuading me that might be a better shot.
Well, the truth is, I covered 2016. Obviously, he was full of it, but Trump talked progressively on a lot of issues. He was anti-trade, which is a pretty good, strong progressive issue. Said, let's get out of the wars. He mentioned universal health care. And actually, it just came out on a tape. You might not be for him, but just came out on this audio that was reported in the news. Trump was recorded saying in 2016 he was most worried about Hillary picking Bernie Sanders as vice president because of the issue of trade, which was so critical in those Midwest states. So all I keep hearing is Biden's most electable, Bernie, Warren to a lesser extent is extreme, but they're doing incredibly well in polls. Bernie in particular excites young people, and there just seems to, with Trump, the media poo-pooed the crowds, but he had these massive crowds. Bernie's getting massive crowds, Warren got massive crowds. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but here's the bottom line too in Iowa. We have about the same number of registered Dems and Repubs and a huger number of independents. And I'm actually really behind your point that what we really need, because even if we have enough Dems, we don't vote. So somebody who, with a crowd enthusiasm, can get especially younger people involved in the political process, I think I'm persuaded that Bernie's the one, My partner's already pretty much sure she's going to caucus for Bernie. I'm on the fence because I really am in love with Elizabeth Warren, because who would not want a brilliant, sassy woman for president? But either one.
I think Warren, I've noticed her polls started to dive when she moved kind of softer on Medicare for all. She was the front runner over the summer. She said, I'm with Bernie. And people, I think a lot of Bernie supporters were like, I love Bernie, but you know, she's a little bit younger, maybe a woman would be great?
That was my argument. She's 10 years younger. She's got a whole lot of the same positions. And I see her heart a lot, and that means a lot to me, that she's a real person who cares about the real little person's stories. She does really well with that at her events. So.
All right, so I've already converted you in 5 minutes.
Good job.
Last question. You know, I think people are obviously spoken on the caucus, but in a general election, I mean, there's a lot of these red states that even some Republicans are closet progressives on the issues. I mean, I just spoke with a Republican the other night. First thing he mentioned was climate change. I was like, but you support Trump? I mean, he's fracking all over the country. Do you think a state like Iowa, if a Democrat, you know, talked the language, because we've seen, I mean, Obama won Indiana in 2008. Bernie does fairly well in red states. Do you think we're moving away from this left-right and more establishment first outsider, even in an Iowa?
I think you're right, and I live in rural Iowa, and I do agree with you about the whole thing about being a closet progressive, so maybe you're right about the strategy of trying to appeal to people so much more on those issues, and you're right, speaking that language, you know, using the language like Buttigieg uses. He's very fluent in speaking to people with a very strong religious background, and so they are willing to hear him in a way they might not normally reacting to, who's this gay guy running for.
Don't get me started on him. I went to South Bend. The media has propped him up. He's got some issues.
Well, but that's always the case. You know, nobody's perfect. We're all human beings, so we just got to go. I like your idea, though, about if someone can speak the language, because that we all only hear in certain phrases, you know.
I also think with Biden in particular, he's got the resume, but I think Trump is going to do the same thing he did to Hillary. Even though the Hunter Biden thing, whatever, he's just going to carpet the airways and muddy the waters. And he's the most corrupt president, but he's just going to say, well, what about him? And people throw up their hands and say, and that depresses turnout. That's what happened in 2016. There was less, I think 5% less black people came out for Hillary than Obama, which, you know, obviously Obama was a historic candidate. Last question, I lied. When you see all the media coverage, and it just tends to be like, Trump tweeted this, Warren and Bernie like trying to create this friction. Do you think the media has done its job actually on the issues? I mean, you got 40% of Americans are living in poverty. The planet's on fire. And it's like this infotainment vortex. Trump tweets something and we talk about it all day.
Yeah, I mean, he is really good at using that. And I don't know. I don't listen a lot to that stuff because I know that's what it is. It's really pretty much a circus. But it is important. I miss to be able to trust the quality of my journalism. You know, I miss that I have to be a much more careful media consumer in order to even hope I'm getting good information. And you're right. If it's about money and eyeballs, craziness sells. Sensationalism sells. So I think you have to take everything with a ton of salt, you know.
Well, check out non-corporate media on YouTube. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.